Hey, fellow warriors. Welcome to episode number 230 of Warriors Unmasked. Thank you for being with me today, and thank you for giving me the gift of your time to enjoy another amazing episode of Warriors Unmasked. If you like inspirational stories, then you're going to love today's show. Glenn Sturm is going to share his journey with cancer, and you're going to get some great tips and insights on how you can approach life in good and challenging times that you can implement into your life to help improve your journey every single day. So let's dig in. It's going to be an amazing show. Welcome to Warriors Unmasked. I'm your host, Chuck Thus. In this podcast, you'll hear incredible stories of mental health, hope, resilience, and the courage to heal. After struggling with OCD, anxiety, depression, and even intrusive thoughts, it all came to a head one fall evening when I made the decision to take my life. Thankfully, that's not how my story ended, and yours doesn't have to either. I'm on a mission to help and support people like you win at their mental health so they can be the warriors they are. On every episode, you'll get tools, tips, and strategies that you need to thrive. Let's jump right in. Glenn Sturm, welcome to Warriors Unmasked. What an honor and a pleasure it is to have you on the show. I'm so excited for everyone to get to know Glenn. This is going to be an amazing, amazing show. So welcome.
Well, thank you so much. Thanks for having me. I love what you're doing.
Well, thank you, sir. And before we go any further, Glenn, from the bottom of my heart, I want to say thank you for your 30 plus years of military service. Without people like you, we don't get to live in the greatest country in the world, and we don't get to live in a world that we live in. Maybe as crazy as it seems some days, and as upside down or backwards as it may seem some days to some people, it would pale in comparison to what this world could look like if it wasn't for people like you. So thank you.
Well, thank you. But let me thank somebody else. I want to thank the U.S. Army. I had a draft lottery number of 33, and I was offered an ROTC scholarship, and I took it. And so before you graduate, I was a distinguished military grad, but no big deal about that. I mean, it was just one of many. But you took the GRE, and I did well enough on that I earned a fellowship, and they paid for my master's degree while I was on active duty. And then the U.S. Army, through the GI Bill, paid for my law school. And I was never a JAG officer, but I practiced law separately. But this country paid for all of my education, and I've owed to this country for my whole success in life. And that's the reason I stayed in the reserves as long as I did, because I thought I owed, I could pay back, and I could help other soldiers.
Glenn, that just speaks volumes to the person that you are. And that's one of the reasons I'm so excited for everyone to get to know Glenn Sturm and the journey that you've been on, because that just scratches the surface. And for you to share that is incredible. So thank you.
Well, thank you.
Glenn, you just touched on it, that you are a University of Florida law honors grad. You're a 4-time best-selling author now, and we're going to get into that in just a minute. You had it going on for a long time, but on January 21st, 2009, your life changed forever. Take us a little bit on that journey, if you would.
Well, I call it the call. I was at the Atlanta airport, which is always a busy place, and I was on my way to the University of North Carolina to give a speech. And I was going to get to watch the Clemson-Carolina basketball game, and I had never seen a real ACC basketball game. So I was really excited. And back in 2009, we didn't have many spam calls. And so my phone rang, and I didn't recognize the number. And I said, well, I'm going to have to call something back when it's over, so I might as well take it. So I said, hello. And this person said, this is Doctor. And I said, hey, how you doing? And well, I had run triathlons with her and a bunch of other doctors. And she said, Glenn, we got the biopsy results back. I'm sitting here thinking, what biopsies? She said, well, we did these before Christmas. I said, yeah, you did it before my birthday, which is the 14th. And she said, yeah. I said, we got the results. And she said, okay. I had a lot of biopsies done. She says, it came positive bad for cancer. I said, what? She said, yeah, it came positive bad for cancer. You have lymphoma. And I was like, okay, this can't be true. Okay, who put you up to this? Because my doc friends, I'm the only lawyer who runs with a bunch of doctors, and they always harass me. And so I just thought it was a joke. And she got real serious real quick. She says, no, Glenn, they've come back for T-cell lymphoma, which is a cancer of the immune system and the blood system. And we need you back here immediately to get more biopsies done. And I said, well, not today. I'm got to give a speech in the morning. I said, tomorrow afternoon, you need to be here. And so I got up, I flew to North Carolina, I gave the presentation, watched my basketball game, and flew back, and they did some more biopsies. And this time it didn't take 4 weeks to get an answer. They came back in 2 days, and she said it came positive back for T-cell lymphoma, and it's an aggressive, incurable form of it. And I said, okay, this is all on the phone. And so it's like, okay, that's not what I expected. And yeah, I kind of withdrew a little bit, but I started researching and everything I could. And I read a book that was probably the most important thing I've ever read. It was not, maybe not a book, it was an article, but it was by a guy who had my disease, and he had died 6 months after notice. And he was thankful. He was thankful because unlike his friends who had died in Vietnam, or had died of a heart attack, or had died in a car wreck, he had 6 months to make peace, to celebrate his kids and his grandkids. He had 6 months that was going to be wonderful. So I did my first Caring Bridge post that I did shortly after that. And I said, I am not going to let cancer define me. I'm going to celebrate life every day for as long as I live. And I hope every day I can make somebody's life better. And that's where my put a smile on somebody's face every day comes in, which is something I do every day of my life. I always try to do it. There's some fun things about that because someday living in Wyoming, it's snowy and blizzard-like, you don't meet anybody else. So how do you put a smile? So you're on the phone with somebody on a call center and you can tell they had a bad day. You can't see them smile, so you have to make them laugh. And the only way you can do that is making fun of yourself. And you get them to laugh because you're making fun of yourself. But if you do it every day, that changes their blood chemistry. It changes their outlook. It changes their day from a hard day to maybe an easier day. And if you try to do that every day, it just changes everything. And it makes the world a little bit better. And you make somebody's life better one at a time, you can change the world. That's all it takes, is one person at a time.
What an amazing outlook, Glenn, and something that you've impressed upon me and I'm going to implement into my life. And just to make one person every day smile, all of a sudden you never know, they may make someone smile, and before you know it, there's 2 or 3 more people smiling, and they make 2 or 3 people smile, and before you know it, it's been a big domino effect. So thank you for sharing that. That's incredible.
If I could, there's one more thing that we do. In my portfolio companies, I ask every employee to do the following thing on their way home from work every day. And they're not to tell anybody else the answer to this question. But I want you to ask yourself, what did I do today to make somebody's job easier or their life better? Just ask yourself that. And if culturally we do that, it changes a company, then it'll change our community, and then it can change a state, and maybe it can change the country. But what did I do today to make somebody's job easier or their life better? And it's just a mantra, and it's not hard. Don't have to tell anybody what you did. You might not do it every day, but just ask yourself.
Yeah, that's incredible, Glenn. Thank you for sharing both of those life-changing words of wisdom. And I want to right now challenge each one of you, everyone listening, to take both of those, put them in your daily routines. How can we make someone's job easier or their life better, and put a smile on someone's face every single day? And let's watch the world change right before our eyes.
Absolutely.
So Glenn, take us back to receiving the call. You hang up with the doctors. What's going through your mind?
Oh, first there was fear, but I can't show it. You don't know what's going to happen. It's just a total unknown. And what do you do? I mean, how do you explain it? And I didn't tell my kids right away, but I mean, it was just the unknown. I mean, it was not fun. So my wife was living in Wyoming with my son, and I was commuting. And that weekend I had to go out. I just went out to Wyoming, and my son and I had a contest of skiing. Now, I weighed 100 pounds more than he did probably. And he couldn't get over the fact that I was beating him because he was so much better than I was. And I had to remind him that I weighed 100 pounds more and gravity did have an effect. And so it was such a good weekend. I decided to come back for the next weekend. And I had done a lot of processing. My ex at the time, she's a geneticist by training. So she'd done a lot of work. And I got off the plane and came down the steps, first off the plane. And in Jackson, we don't have bridges, sky bridges. We just get out onto the tarmac. And I got off and hit the most perfect black ice I've ever seen in my life. Slipped and tore my ACL. And I'm on the ground. And I remember something my daughters told me, and that was, Dad, the wambulance is gone. Dad, the wambulance is gone. And I said, okay, it's time to get up and get started on the rest of my life. And that one thing crystallized everything for the future. Now, the surgery came, and there was a phenomenal benefit of the surgery because I got a physical therapist who helped me for 10 years. But it was just a mindset change. And I've always believed there's not a hill you can't climb if you choose to. And I've always known that only you can stop you. Nobody else can stop you if you choose to do it and you'll work hard enough at it. But once you're told you got the cancer thing, you have a tendency to withdraw a bit. But tearing the ACL, I didn't know it was torn at that moment, but I knew it didn't feel good. And I didn't feel great laying in the ice for a second. But it was like this instantaneous thing for my daughter. Dad, the ambulance is gone. She had a car accident that was not her fault, but it was a brand new car. She had wrecked a bit. And I put too much emphasis in the monetary issues and stuff. And she finally broke that in me by saying, Dad, the ambulance is gone one day. She quit whining about it. And so at that moment, that's what I thought. That's how it all changed. So that year, though, it was once a month I had to go back to Yale to see the oncologist. And the cancer was not getting better. And so in October, she said, Glenn, if it doesn't get better next month, we're going to have to put you on IV chemo. And when that happened, because of the possibility of chemo brain, I had to leave my law firm because I was doing very large deals and the insurance companies didn't want somebody with potentially chemo brain doing it. So at the age of 54, I was the corporate chairman of the firm on a 5-person board who ran the firm. I've been on it for over 20 years. And I lost my job too. So you could easily go negative. But the reason my first book is called Cancer Set Me Free is I had to reinvent myself. Okay, there's some guardrails you have. I mean, I had to have IV chemo 3 days every 3 weeks for years. But, what was I going to do different? And so I got in shape, worked with a phenomenal physical therapist. Since I got served with divorce papers shortly after this, I had a divorce, my dog died, I lost my job, and my dad died. And so my general practitioner said, Glenn, you need a psychiatrist. And I said, well, why are you saying that? I've never thought about that. And he convinced me that I should see one, and I did, and it was the best decision he ever made for me. Because if you look at my new book, it's going to be called A New Hope. The publisher wants to change that name, but I'm not going to let him. It's on multidisciplinary cancer teams. If you have a team of physicians and lay people who work together on your case, there's up to a 70% reduction in mortality rates. Well, I didn't know that at the time because it hadn't been published. But I knew about when I was doing a big deal, I could have up to 30 lawyers on it. I'd have a tax lawyer, a banking lawyer, a bankruptcy lawyer. You just had the right experts. Everybody was the expert. And so it was normal for me to have experts. So I now had a psychiatrist, and then I had a bike wreck. And there's a race out here called Latoja. It's 203 miles in one day, 7,500 feet of climbing. And the year before I got cancer, I finished 5th overall. And so I was determined the next year I was going to do better. And I had a bad wreck, a really bad wreck. This is all outlined in the new book, but I'm not going to bore you more. But it had a crushed collarbone, which required surgery, and they had to rebuild it and put artificial stuff in. but I had to have a physical therapist. Well, she may be the most important person in the whole process because the key to these teams working is communication. She saw me 4 or 5 days a week. Every week, she took a picture of my back where the cancer normally presents itself first and sent it in with a note about how I was doing to my oncologist. So there was continuous daily feedback about my condition. And that's the key to success. If you read it now, all the studies say that. And so now a cancer care team can have as many as 50 professionals in it. The last person is probably a music therapist. That's still important because some people react very positively to that.
Yeah.
You have administrative people to track trend analysis. You have a quantitative oncologist who does the mathematics, and which is important because of drug interaction issues. But building a team is what it's about. And being a person who built teams his whole life, it was natural for me to build my own team. But I didn't find out about the importance of these teams until last year when we had a communications failure. I almost died because of that. And so I was in very bad shape. And this is the first time I've ever told anybody publicly about that. But what happened was they wrote a prescription for a medicine which was contraindicated and it interacted with other things badly. And I was comatose. If my daughter hadn't insisted on finding me, I wouldn't be here today. But no permanent damage, that we got it all fixed. But there hadn't been anybody communicating regularly with my doctors, and the doctors here didn't read my history. And they wrote a prescription for something they shouldn't have prescribed. And so it's all about communication. It's all about serving others. And I was served by others, which kept me alive, which means it's even more important that I continue to do good things for other people. That's what I got to do.
Well, Glenn, you are now 17 years and counting, a survivor from that day on January 21st, 2009. Most people, I think I feel safe saying most people, or a lot of people in your position would definitely play the victim role. You refuse to do that.
I'm the blessed one. I'm blessed.
Take us a little bit on that mindset, though, but how do you change this? You can tell by the way you talk that you are 100% the victor in this situation, but it would be normal human reaction, I think, normal human psychology to be the victim. And I think maybe that's part of what has you 17 years and counting is that you refuse to be the victim.
Absolutely, I refuse to be a victim because I'm not one. For years, I tried to get people to understand that there has to be something different about people who are long-term cancer survivors. My daughter was told I had 2.5 years, and I'm now over 7 times that long. And I'm in perfect shape and doing great. So what's going on? So I pushed and pushed to try to get them to study long-term cancer survivors. And about a month ago, I found something that I knew had to be true, but I didn't have proof of it. And that is quality of life. Okay, most people who have cancer have a very poor quality of life because there's something called cancer fatigue syndrome. I had it, and you'll fall asleep randomly maybe. You have no energy. How do you get started? Well, I was put on a medication that took care of that issue, and it also helped cognitive function. And then I was diagnosed with it being ADD, which most of my friends say I have the attention span of an adolescent fruit fly. So that was not a surprise to anybody. But you put the two together, I've got all the energy in the world and can concentrate and be as productive as you could imagine. But it's a quality of life. And there's a linear relationship between quality of life and long-term survivorship. So the higher your quality of life is, and it's measurable, the better you're going to do. And you lose the whole victim stuff. Because guess what? You can throw a pack on your back and climb a mountain. That's what you choose to do. There's a funny story about this because I'm 72 now, and I carry a 50 or 60 pound backpack because my camera gear and my meds I have to carry, and I carry it as a carry-on. And it's pretty big. Everybody sees this old guy with, I guess it's gray, maybe almost white now, here, and they see this big backpack. They try to help me, and I said, "I got this. Don't worry." And they all kind of look at me. I just yank it off. I've been doing it for some years and just slide it right onto my shoulders. It just slides right on out of the overhead. And they all just kind of look at me and they say, can we help you with your rolling bag? I said, sure, it weighs about half of my backpack. If you want to, that's fine. Thank you. I always say help. And they all kind of look at me and laugh. Another day, you put a smile on somebody's face. But the whole point is cancer fatigue syndrome with chemo brain, CCCI or CCRI is what they call it. If you eliminate those two issues, you change the quality of life. If you're older like I am, you have time with your grandkids. I mean, my gosh, is that a gift? And you may not live as long, but you're going to live longer, better. But the real person you got to worry about this in this process is not the patient, it's the caregiver, because nobody worries about them. They're the ones who can't fix anything, and they're an observer to their loved one falling apart. And whether it's a spouse or a child doing it, who's looking out after them? Well, once you figure that out, and you also take care of the fatigue issue, everybody I know who's figured those things out has a positive outlook on life and is smiling. Now, I mean, every day when you get the IV hooked up into your port, do you want to be there? No, you'd like that to be doing something else. But, I mean, I celebrate all the staff in the hotel I stay at Yale. This is the study. They've never changed my rate since I went there in 2009. They've never increased it because they now got cancer. Then the question becomes, how do I give back to these people who've helped me? There are all sorts of ways to do it. I've seen all sorts of people do it differently. Every year, I frame about 140 of my photographs and sign them. And every employee at the hospital who works in my areas and every employee at the hotel and the Delta employees up at Hartford all get a signed copy of one of my pictures, and whether it's in one of my books or otherwise. And it's a way of saying thanks. And the best day of my life every year is when somebody who is a janitor or one of the staff people, the lowest level people, shows me a picture of their living room or their dining room with 10 to 15 of my pictures hanging on their wall. It just makes my day because it means to me that that effort that I put in every year to do that for those who've kept me alive has meant something to somebody else. But again, it's all about not being a victim, but being a servant leader. Because with cancer, you're given opportunities to do things to help others. And if you focus on the caregivers, if you focus on the staff, think good things are going to happen. And you're going to live longer when you do that.
I absolutely, Glenn, loved your perspective on life. And you mentioned your book, Cancer Set Me Free. Take us a little bit on the journey around the title of that book, because I find it absolutely fascinating. And of course, I have my own thoughts of what that means, but I would love it to come from you, the author of the book, the generator of the title. Share with us a little bit what that means and where that came from. This week's episode of Warriors Unmasked has been brought to you by the Shift Group. Shift Group is turning athletes into sales professionals. Is your company looking to hire driven, competitive former athletes? Are you a former college or pro hockey player or former collegiate athlete in any sport and trying to figure out what's next? Consider a meaningful career in technology sales and let the Shift Group guide you every step of the way. Reach out to them directly at www.shiftgroup.io or email them directly at jr@shiftgroup.io to get started today.
Thank you for the question. It's never been asked before in an area. It's very perceptive of you. Well, I'm at the top of my game. I'm 54 years old, and I've accomplished what everybody who ever goes to law school or grad school, professional school has wanted. You're the top of the heap. I had started a company and taken it public as a CEO while I was doing the law gig too. Did the first internet bank software company, created it. It was like a man in full. But what happened was all that was gone. And what are you going to do now? And so I worked on getting in better shape. I started teaching corporate finance at the graduate school level at the University of Florida. And lawyers don't teach corporate finance because lawyers can't read income statements. That's the rumor anyway. I'm teaching at the highest level at the University of Florida, and I love doing that. I just love teaching. And then, I live in one of the neatest places in the world for photography. Well, that picture that's being auctioned off at the Brain Cancer Institute on October 18th in St. Paul, Minnesota. I took that in 97. So I always carried cameras with me, and I'm in this wonderful place for photography. So I started taking pictures. Well, I didn't have the time to really do that before. And then about 2 years into that, I read in the paper there's going to be a solar eclipse coming right over Jackson, Wyoming. I said, okay, how do you shoot a solar eclipse? And so I put a team together to do that, and we shot it. First time I ever shot it, we shot 9,400 or 500 images that day. And we took a picture every 5 minutes, a bunch of cameras in my team. The next eclipse is August 12th of this year. It's a sunset eclipse in Spain. So I've become what's called an umbraphile. I chase eclipses now. But during the 5-minute interval between shots for the time lapses, there were kids all around us. And so I brought the kids over to look at the cameras. And one of the cameras then was a 1,000 millimeter lens, which is a pretty big lens. That was close-ups. And we had a 15 millimeter lens for time lapse and wide angles. And the kids, their smiles on their faces and their eyes got so big. And I'm sitting here saying, this is something that I should be doing more of. And we came in that night, I didn't know if I'd taken one good picture. And the first picture I looked at was totality with solar flares. And it took the breath out of me. It was just so beautiful. And I said, okay, I'm going to do this again. And my colleague in this, Brittany, said, Glenn, the next eclipse is next year, and it's in Chile. I said, we're going. And so I'm no longer a lawyer. I'm now an eclipse chaser. So we just started doing that. And the pictures were pretty good. And several of them hang in the Vatican, which is unbelievable to me. There's a long story of that. And when you get to meet IHMC, you'll understand it. They're a big astronomy organization. And Brother Guy Cosamago, who was the head of the Papal Church's astronomy organization, was somebody I got to know. He was very instrumental in my son's falling in love with science. So I took him pictures of, when I was backpacking in Patagonia, of a chapel that Pope John Paul II had dedicated to 8 climbers and had died. And the cross is superimposed. It's a real picture. It's not Photoshop, with the patina on it, with a white glacier in the background. And so it was a pretty good picture. And so all of a sudden, my pictures are getting some notoriety. And that's where I swore that I'd never put a penny for any of my pictures in my pocket. It all goes to children's health, shelters, PTSD, kids' cancer in general. And so what happened was, if it hadn't been for cancer, I wouldn't be able to do any of these things. I would have never taken the time. I would have just stopped working about a year ago. And instead, I've had 15 and a half years to pursue every dream I've ever wanted to pursue. And I was blessed to do that. I don't know why I got picked, but why the fickle finger hit me. But I'm very happy that it did. Because, I can't imagine having a life that's been different from the life I've led.
Glenn, again, I'm just astounded by the way you look at life. And is it safe to say that cancer's been one of the biggest blessings you've ever received?
No doubt. If not, I would have been working 80 hours a week and making money, but that's not what it's all about.
And so, Glenn, if you were to be able to sit in front of people and talk to them about cancer setting you free, about the perspective change that you've had on life because of the cancer. I've known a lot of people that have died from cancer, including my mother and my sister. I've had aunts and uncles, friends.
Sorry.
The list is long. How would Glenn Sturm talk to these people about having a perspective change like you have? Because in my heart, I feel that if it was not for your perspective change, I wouldn't be having this life-changing conversation tonight.
I am so blessed. When I was younger, one of the most instrumental things that ever happened to me was I went to 4 high schools. That was a career Army officer, a real hero, World War II Korea Vietnam combat commander. And I moved to a new high school for my senior year. And 2 or 3 weeks in, I'd taken some test that I thought I didn't know what the SAT and the ACT was. But in Florida, at the time, you had to take a test called the Florida Senior Placement Test. And I had no idea what it was. So I just blew through it and didn't care. And the teacher didn't like my attitude, I don't think, and she was probably justified. Because I thought we were using the same chemistry book that I used in 8th grade in the Washington, D.C. metro schools. And my teacher told my mom and dad and me that I shouldn't go to college. I should go to trade school. My mom just laughed and said, that's not going to happen. Well, a couple of weeks later, we got the results back. And I was the first kid in the high school's history to get a perfect score on the admissions test for college. And it was a test I didn't take seriously. And I got a perfect score. I thought about that long and hard. When I was growing up, I had a paper route in the 60s. I delivered 600 Washington Posts every day. And I made $1 a post. So in 1968, my dad was lieutenant colonel in the Army making $10,000 a year. I was making over $6,000 a year. My first date, I had cash, and so I bought front row seats to a Jimi Hendrix concert at the International Ballroom, Washington Hilton. And nobody at the school knew who I was. And I asked the prettiest girl in the school to go with me on a Sunday afternoon. She went. And one of my other things is only you can stop you. Well, I've had people in my life tell me I couldn't do something. Okay, well, no, they're always wrong. I can do it. I just bear down and do it and decide if I want to do it, I can be passionate about it. And if you have passion about something, it's not work. And then you can be successful at it, and success breeds success. So I believe in teaching people concepts through what they're interested in, and not teaching people by memorization. So my son he wanted to know how far a car could go who was doing Mach 3 and hit a ramp at 30 degrees and was still doing Mach 3 at the end of the ramp. And the ramp was like 100 yards long. And he wanted to learn that. So, teacher's saying he doesn't pay attention in math. He doesn't write down his work. I said, well, has he ever missed a question? No. So why should he have to write his work down if he knows the answer every time? And she said, well, he needs to. I said, well, why don't we try this? So we put my son's equation up. I said, what does he have to learn to do those things? He's in 5th grade. So he's got to learn algebra, got to learn geometry, he's got to learn trade. Algebra 2, physics, friction coefficients, heat dissipation indices. We made a list of about 40 things. But he wanted to learn how to do this, to answer this question. So he said, where's an algebra book, Dad? And I looked at his 5th grade teacher and said, do you have an algebra book? She said, we don't teach that at this level. And I said, can you get him an algebra book? Yeah, he taught himself in a couple of weeks because that's what he wanted to learn. So if you teach a child through what they're interested in, so you can teach a kid physics through baseball or basketball or football. Something called the OODA loop, which is a force and energy management technique in addition to other definitions of it. You can teach physics through that if the kid's interested in space. So you look at ways to make things interesting and make people be passionate about what they're doing. It's not hard, but you've got to take yourself out of what you want to do and figure out what they need for them to be successful. And once you put your head in that role and become the servant leader that we're all capable of doing, because even if we don't know how to do it, we can find somebody who does. And when you find somebody who's an excellent at whatever they do, they always want to teach somebody about it. And that goes for a mechanic or a plumber. And you have a kid who wants to learn something, and you tell somebody they're really interested in this, or they show that they're interested and show respect, and they're gonna soar. So a lot of that I learned after I got cancer, but a lot of it was because my mom always knew I could do anything. And she told me that. So that's where the book comes from.
And isn't that one of the greatest things that your mom taught you, is that you can do anything? Because here you are at 72, doing absolutely everything you want to, excelling at everything that you do. You're a 17-year survivor of incurable cancer, mind you, doing all of this because you know you can. And I'm a believer, Glenn, I'm going to take it one step further with you. I'm a believer that we are all Glenn Sturm, that we can all do anything that we want to. It's just we have to make the decision. We have to make the decision to be great. We have to make the decision of what we want to do and then go do it. And I think that's where you're the victor and not the victim, because every single day you make the decision of what you want to do and you go do it. And that is incredibly admirable.
Well, I'm blessed. I had great parents. I was born in a great country. I've had great opportunities, and I am one of the luckiest people I've ever met. And cancer was not a negative for me, it was a positive. But as they said, when they were talking about it, some people were talking about it, and they said, no matter what fruit it is, I make lemonade. No matter what obstacle I make lemonade out of it. That's because I was empowered to do that by others. And now my job is to teach others the same thing.
You are such an amazing human, Glenn Sturm. You really are. I have one more question for you, sir, before I let you go.
Okay.
Before I do, I just want to quickly remind our listeners to go to warriorsunmasked.com, where you can learn all about Glenn Sturm. You can find out where to buy his books, and we're going to talk about that in just a minute. But you can read about him, you can learn about him, you can find out where to purchase his books, and I would encourage you to do so. You've gotten a little bit of a glimpse into this incredible man tonight, and I want to encourage everyone to just dig a little bit deeper, because there's a lot to learn, and this man can definitely make your life a little bit better. And I know that you have an option of where you listen to your podcast, and when you listen on Apple, I want to ask you to hit that plus sign in the top right corner so you never miss an episode of Warriors Unmasked. And one more favor. I think we all know somebody. It seems as though we all know somebody that's battling cancer. It seems like everywhere we turn, someone has cancer. And I want to ask you tonight to share this episode, because Glenn Sturm has the ability to change your perspective, to change your life. And just maybe the somebody that you share this episode with can be the next 17, 18, 19, 20-year survivor of cancer. Because if one man can do it, two can do it. And if two can do it, three can do it. And who knows who else can do it. So I want to ask you to do that tonight. Glenn, there is somebody out there tonight listening to you and I. And they're thinking, Glenn, man, you're on the right side of this coin, but I don't know that I am. I don't know that I have it in me to have the perspective that you have. I don't know if I have it in me to be the victor, not the victim. What would you say to that person tonight if you had an opportunity to speak with them?
The question is, who do you love? Who do you love? And what's the biggest hurdle you're facing in the cancer fight? Don't think about cancer. What is the biggest hurdle in your daily life that you're facing? We can solve that hurdle. Okay, you can solve that hurdle. And when you do, that's the first step to setting yourself free of cancer and setting yourself free in life. But again, you have to simplify it. What's the hurdle? What's the one thing that bugs you the most about it? Is it because you can't get out of bed, or you sit down in a chair, you can't get up? It's called cancer fatigue syndrome. Look it up on the web. Just do a search. And there's cures for it. Not cures, but there's medicine that'll eliminate it. And once you have your energy back, that means you can get out of that chair and you can go hug that person you love. And you don't wait for them to come hug you. And when you do that, you're going to put a big smile on their face. And when you start giving smiles, every day of the rest of your life is going to be a blessing. So please just identify the one issue and find the solution, and they're there. One of the last things I'll tell you, and this is something I do with my book. If anybody on the call on this show has bought the book and you have a friend who gets cancer, give them the book, send me an email. I'll replace the book with a signed first edition. I've got one person who's gotten 10 of my books because they've given 10 away to other people with cancer. And that's just my way of trying to help. And I wish I could help everybody in person, but we can't. But maybe that way you can. And when you give the book away to somebody, you're going to put a smile on their face. So that'll take it one more step.
Glenn, where can people find your books? And how can they get a hold of you?
Okay, it's Amazon. They're all on Amazon. My new book is A New Hope, which is called Multidisciplinary Cancer Care Practices and How That Reduces Mortality Rates by Up to 70%. My first novel comes out in May, right before Memorial Day, and it's a 6-book series called The Green Murphy Succession. It's about 2 guys and their lives during World War II up through Vietnam, and then their sons and their grandsons all the way through the War on Terror. And then the last 3 books of the series are World War III, which we hope never happens. But Amazon is where you can get it. Your local bookstores. Now, we're supposed to have a big book tour on both of these books. And what happens is I love local bookstores. And so when we go to local bookstores, I don't let them buy the books that we sell those days. I give them to them because I love Barnes & Noble or I love Amazon. But having a bookstore for your kids to go to is so critical. I want us all to support a local bookstore. And if I'm in your neighborhood or anything, there's somebody who watches my public email address, and I'm going to give you after we get off the air my private one if you need to send it out there. But if I'm coming to town and somebody needs to meet me, just let me know and I'll meet you. Because every day to me is a blessing. And anybody who wants to meet with me, I take the time to meet with them. I mean, this country paid for my education. And this country will pay for other kids' education. The RTC scholarship program is real. It's available. And what I want people to know is that only you can stop you. I mean, there's always a way to accomplish things. And the person who's not feeling good about cancer, just simplify it to the one biggest issue and then solve it. And if you can't solve it, if your doctors can't solve it, there's something called a multidisciplinary practice. And in my book, there are QR codes. And these documents are in that. But there's a letter to anybody who's newly diagnosed, along with the list of everybody who's in every physician or other people you need. I'm going to send it to you. You can post it. But in it, it says, if your hospital or your doctor doesn't do this, ask them who you should go see. Because do you want to be part of the 70% of the people with virtually eliminated, or 70% of the people with cancer whose mortality rates are eliminated? That takes a process. And all you got to do is find the people who are doing that process for you. And they're there. Your chance of mortality goes down by 70%. It's just unbelievable. So I'll send you this thing. You can feel free to post it. And on the book tours, they'll all be announced, and I'll spend the time with anybody. And we'll keep the bookstore open to get it done.
Glenn Sturm, you are an amazing human and soul. Thank you for being you. Thank you for everything you're doing. And I never thought I would ever say this, but thank goodness for you getting cancer, because it has set you free and you are changing the world, my friend. I never in a million years thought I would ever say that, but it has changed you and it's changing the world. So thank you.
Well, thank you for having me today. And if I can ever do anything for you, let me know. I will. And I try to end every conversation with that statement. And I mean it. If there's something I can do to help you or anybody here, I will do everything I can to do it.
And that offer is extended back to you, my friend, and I mean it as well. Thank you. Wow. What an amazing episode with Glenn Sturm. One thing that stood out to me is Glenn's attitude, his passion for life, and how he celebrates each and every day. And I'm going to apply this in my life this week by adopting this approach as well. And I hope you'll do the same. If you do, reach out to me. You can always connect with me by following the links in the show notes. Remember, I do this for a living. I'm on a mission to help change lives. If you'd like to get on a coaching call or need a speaker for your next event, just follow the link in the show notes. Always know I'm rooting for you. Be brave and live unmasked. We'll see you on the next episode. Thank you and much love. Thank you for listening to Warriors Unmasked. Always know you are not alone and we are in this together. To get one-on-one coaching with me or learn how I can speak at your next event, follow the links in the show notes to connect more. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave us a review and share it with a warrior in your life who you know needs to hear it.